A shadow at Camp Whispering Pines. The summer of 2011 was supposed to be my escape, a chance to ditch the monotony of my small town and make memories at Camp Whispering Pines. I was 14, awkward, and not exactly thrilled about being shipped off to a sleepaway camp in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. But my cousin Jake, my partner in crime since we were toddlers, was going too, so I figured it couldn't be all bad. The camp was nestled deep in a valley, surrounded by thick pine forests that seemed to swallow the sunlight. It had that classic summer camp vibe: creaky cabins, a sprawling mess hall, and a lake that shimmered under the stars. But something about the place felt off from the moment we arrived. Little did I know, by the end of those 2 weeks, I'd be running for my life from something or someone that didn't belong. Arrival, the gravel crunched under the bus tires as we pulled into Camp Whispering Pines. Jake and I grabbed our duffel bags and shuffled out with the other kids, a mix of nervous first-timers and cocky veterans. The air smelled like pine needles and damp earth, and the counselors, tanned, overly enthusiastic 20-somethings, herded us toward the main lodge for orientation. The lodge was a massive wooden building with high ceilings and faded banners from decades past. It had a stage for talent shows, a dining hall with long tables, and a game room stuffed with ping-pong tables and ancient arcade machines. Our cabin, Pine Hollow, was one of 6 boys' cabins arranged in a semicircle around a fire pit. It was old with splintered floorboards and bunk beds that groaned under our weight. Jake claimed the top bunk above mine, tossing his bag up with a grin. "This place is straight out of a slasher movie," he said, mimicking a knife slash. I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. The windows were drafty, the screens torn in places, and the forest loomed so close you could hear the branches scraping the roof at night. That first evening, we sat through a campfire welcome. The head counselor, a wiry guy named Mr. Callahan with a permanent sunburn, laid out the rules. No wandering off alone, no electronics after lights out, and stay out of the old maintenance shed by the lake. "It's locked for a reason," he said, his voice dropping low. "Nobody goes in there." Jake nudged me, raising an eyebrow. I rolled my eyes, but the way Mr. Callahan's gaze lingered on the crowd made my stomach twist. The first night. By the third night, Jake and I had settled into a routine. Days were packed with canoeing, archery, and capture the flag, but nights were ours. We'd smuggled our handheld gaming consoles, mine a beat-up PSP, his a Game Boy Advance, and played under the covers after lights out. The other boys in Pine Hollow were either snoring or whispering dumb jokes, so we kept our screens dim and our voices low. It was past midnight when we heard it, a soft thump outside the cabin. We froze, my finger hovering over the pause button. "Probably just a raccoon," Jake whispered, but his eyes were wide. The thump came again, closer this time, like something heavy brushing against the cabin wall. I peeked out from under my blanket, expecting to see a shadow pass by the window. Nothing, just moonlight filtering through the pines. "Let's check it out," Jake said, already halfway off his bunk. I groaned but followed. No way was I letting him call me a chicken. We tiptoed to the window, our socks silent on the wooden floor. The fire pit outside was a dark smudge, the other cabins barely visible in the gloom. Then a flicker of movement. A shadow darted between the trees, too tall and too human to be an animal. My heart thudded. "You saw that, right?" I whispered. Jake nodded, his grin gone. "Yeah, let's go back to bed." We didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the cabin felt like a warning, and I kept my PSP off, too spooked to focus. By morning, we'd convinced ourselves It was just a counselor doing rounds. But the uneasy feeling stuck with me, like a splinter I couldn't dig out. The whispers. A few days later, during a hike, we overheard some older campers swapping stories about the camp's history. One girl, a lanky 16-year-old named Sarah, mentioned a groundskeeper who'd worked at Whispering Pines decades ago. His name was Elias, she said, her voice hushed. They say he went crazy, started living in the woods after they fired him. Some kids swear they've seen him near the lake, just watching. Jake snorted. Sounds like a ghost story to scare newbies. Sarah shrugged. Maybe, but my counselor last year said they found weird carvings on the trees by the maintenance shed, like symbols. Nobody knows who did them. I didn't say anything, but I kept picturing that shadow from the other night. Jake brushed it off, but I noticed he stuck closer to me during the hike back. That night, we didn't play our games. Instead, we lay in our bunks, listening to the wind howl through the trees. It almost sounded like voices, low, indistinct whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The note? On the 7th night, things got weirder. After dinner, I found a folded piece of paper tucked into my sleeping bag. It was torn from a notebook, the edges ragged and written in smudged pencil. Meet me by the lake at midnight. I know you're awake. No signature, no name. I showed it to Jake, who frowned. This is a prank, right? One of the other kids messing with us. Maybe, I said, but my gut told me otherwise. The handwriting was too neat, too deliberate, not like the sloppy scrawl of a teenager. We debated telling a counselor, but Jake said we'd look like babies. Instead, we agreed to ignore it and stay in the cabin. Midnight came, and we were still awake, too nervous to sleep. The cabin was quiet except for the usual snores. Then my phone buzzed, a cheap flip phone my mom made me bring for emergencies. The screen lit up with a text from an unknown number. Why didn't you come? I'm waiting. My hands went cold. I showed Jake, who stared at the screen like it might bite him. Dude, who has your number? He whispered. Nobody, I said. Just my parents and the counselors. We checked the camp's contact list pinned to the cabin wall. The number didn't match any of the counselors' numbers. I texted back, "Who is this?" No reply. We turned off the phone and shoved it under my pillow, but neither of us slept. Every rustle outside felt like a threat, and I kept imagining someone standing just beyond the window, watching us. The maintenance shed. The next day, Jake was determined to shake off the creepiness. "We're being paranoid," he said over breakfast. "Let's do something stupid to prove we're not scared." His idea? Sneak into the forbidden maintenance shed. I wasn't thrilled, but Jake's confidence was infectious, and I didn't want to be the buzzkill. After lights out, we slipped out of the cabin, avoiding the gravel paths to stay quiet. The shed was a squat, weathered building near the lake, its windows boarded up and a rusty padlock on the door. Jake found a loose board on the side, and with some prying, we squeezed through. Inside, it smelled like mildew and motor oil. Tools hung on the walls, and old crates were stacked in the corner. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, but it didn't work. Jake pulled out his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the room. That's when we saw them. Carvings on the wooden beams, just like Sarah had mentioned. They weren't random scratches. They were symbols, jagged and precise, like something you'd see in a ritual. "This is freaky," I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. Before Jake could reply, we heard a noise, a low, rhythmic tapping from the back of the shed. We froze, the flashlight beam trembling in Jake's hand. The tapping stopped, replaced by a slow, deliberate creak, like a door opening somewhere we couldn't see. "We gotta go," I said, tugging Jake's arm. We scrambled out, hearts pounding, and ran back to the cabin. As we reached the fire pit, I glanced back. A figure stood by the shed, too far to make out clearly, but definitely human, motionless in the moonlight. I didn't stop to look again. The chase. The next few days were tense. Jake and I stuck to the group, avoiding the lake and keeping our phones off. But the texts kept coming, always from that same unknown number. "I see you. Why are you ignoring me?" Each one made my skin crawl. Jake tried to laugh it off, but I could tell he was rattled. On the second to last night, we couldn't avoid it anymore. We were at the campfire, roasting marshmallows, when Mr. Callahan pulled us aside. "You two been near the maintenance shed?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. We stammered denials, but he didn't look convinced. "Stay out of there," he said. "It's not safe." That night, I woke up to Jake shaking me. "Listen," he whispered. The cabin was silent, but outside, there was that tapping again, slow, deliberate, like someone knocking on the cabin wall. My phone buzzed on the bunk. Another text. "Come to the shed, now." I showed Jake, and his face went pale. "We're not going," he said firmly. But the tapping didn't stop. It grew louder, faster, until it sounded like someone was pounding on the back door. The other boys started waking up, murmuring in confusion. Then the door rattled, like someone was trying to force it open. I grabbed Jake, and we bolted for the front door, shouting for the counselors. Outside, the night was alive with shadows. We ran toward the counselor's cabin, but halfway there, I heard footsteps behind us. Heavy, uneven, too fast to be normal. I glanced back and saw him, a tall, gaunt figure in a tattered jacket, his face hidden in shadow. He was gaining on us, moving with a jerky, unnatural gait. "Run!" Jake screamed. We sprinted through the trees, branches snapping at our faces. The counselor's cabin was in sight when I tripped, my ankle twisting on a root. Jake hauled me up, but the footsteps were closer now, accompanied by a low, guttural hum, like a chant. We reached the cabin and pounded on the door until Mr. Callahan yanked it open. "What the hell's going on?" he demanded. "Someone's out there," I gasped, pointing toward the trees. But when we looked, the figure was gone. The forest was silent, the air heavy with the scent of pine. The truth. The next morning, the counselors searched the grounds but found nothing. No footprints, no signs of an intruder. Mr. Callahan sat us down in the lodge, his face grim. "You kids need to stop sneaking around," he said. "There's a reason we keep that shed locked. Years ago, a groundskeeper named Elias lived here. He wasn't right in the head, started carving those symbols, talking about keeping the shadows at bay. He disappeared one summer, and nobody's seen him since." Jake and I exchanged a look. "Was he tall? Wore a jacket?" I asked. Mr. Callahan's eyes widened. "How'd you know that?" We told him everything. The shadow, the texts, the figure by the shed. He didn't say much, just sent us back to our cabin and told us to stay put. That night, the final night, we didn't sleep. Every sound made us jump, and I kept my phone off, terrified of another text. When we left Camp Whispering Pines the next day, I thought it was over. But as the bus pulled away, I looked out the window and saw him. One last glimpse of a tall figure in a tattered jacket, standing at the edge of the forest, watching us go. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't dare check it until we were miles away. The message read, "You'll come back. They always do." I never returned to Whispering Pines. Jake and I don't talk about it much, but sometimes, late at night, I hear that tapping in my dreams, and I wonder if Elias, or whatever he was, still out there, waiting.